adjourn. Second.
Take a motion, yeah.
It's a nice rain this morning.
You know, I got too
I don't know
much to
if it
do at
rained
home.
hard
I want to
tonight.
drag this out a little bit.
Did
You don't
I
need to drag it out. There's no reason to drag it
You
out.
got what?
I got too much crap to do at home. Well, you know, it's raining.
Not sure we need it.
We can go through this pretty quick if you want.
Work in the basement
could.
today. Today's a good day to be indoors. You don't have to water plants.
Nope.
How can you be working in the basement? You got a new house.
Except now I got to cut. Man,
Oh, no,
I'm
for
not
him.
ever
I don't have it,
following.
yeah.
I got to cut every 3 days.
All right.
Oh, it's crazy.
Let's call this meeting to order. The Board of Public Works, City of Washington, Tuesday, June 9th. Roll call, please.
John Vietmeyer,
Here.
Mike Ratatek,
Here?
Brad Mitchell,
Here.
Steve Richardson.
Here.
Steve Struberg,
Here.
Steve Solentrup, Mark Wessels.
Here.
Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. First item of business is to approve the minutes. If you've had a chance to look at those, are there any questions, comments, changes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes passed. Thank you very much. Wastewater, we got a new piece of equipment in the fleet.
Yes, our old sludge spreader, 20-plus years old, decided that it was time for it to retire. It actually broke an axle and lost a wheel. We was able to temporarily weld it back together to finish what we were spreading the day we were spreading it, but me and John talked about it, and we are going to always have sludge, and we're always going to have to spread it. So it was time to retire that spreader and buy a new one. So we did get a new one. We've already been using it. We use it over at the airport. It works great. I just need your approval to move forward for payment on
Are
it.
those spreaders pretty much like a manure spreader? I mean, it's a similar type of thing?
That's exactly what it is. It's a manure spreader. We have to have what they call a side discharge one because it has to actually kind of fling it a little bit more than like the rear discharge ones you see. So that's the only difference, but it is a standard manure spreader. We just call it a sludge spreader because we should spread sludge with it.
That's right.
But it is a manure spreader.
I move that we...
Sounds better when you're
approve it.
talking about the human
Yeah.
waste.
Second.
All right. Anything else on wastewater?
I do have one thing that's not in here. It's just more an informational thing.
Do we need to vote?
Oh, yeah, I do, yes.
I made a motion, he seconded it, we have...
I don't know. What are we voting on? You already bought it.
Well, just for approval for payment. I do have to pay for it now.
It's kind of like my wife.
Kevin, were you able to get that out of your, this year's budget?
Yes. There's actually a budget amendment in here along with the purchase to move some money from one fund to another one because it wasn't actually budgeted. 'Cause we was kind of hoping that we could work a different way of getting rid of the sludge, but it's not working out, so we still have to move forward with the spreader.
Are we still taking it to the farmers across the river?
That was kind of the plan, but John knows more about
Yeah, I
that
can give
than
you an
me.
update on that. So, we paid approximately $3,200 a year to them to actually spread our sludge. And working through the lease agreement over at the airport, there really was no formal agreement with them. Sludge has, it is somewhat of a commodity. It does have some fertilizer value to it. And working through the lease agreement over at the airport, at this time, it didn't make sense for us to continue to pay them. So that's what Kevin and I discussed was we need to be able to handle our own sludge. We don't need to be relying upon a third party without some sort of an agreement to get rid of our sludge. So we have various locations around the city that we identified to place it. One is on the runoff portions at the airport because again, it's a fertilizer, it's a commodity. So that's where we, I think, spread last week. The other was the landfill itself. Was paying, pick a number, $3,000, $5,000 a year for fertilizer. So we can actually store it somewhat indefinitely within the confines of the landfill, and it actually reduces our fertilizer costs at the landfill if we can spread it there. The problem with the landfill is if it's wet, coming out of wintertime, it makes it pretty difficult to do. So we kind of spread it around a little. When I say not spread around, it's a bad word. We kind of place it at different locations at different times of the year and came up with a different strategy to get rid of it, to reduce cost overall for everything, because again, it is a commodity. But to answer your question, the farmers are not taking it right now.
Okay.
However, we are looking at trying to get a rental agreement amendment that would require the farming rental at the airport to take it at no cost. So that's another portion of this that we're working our way through, which would give us, again, another option to get rid of it. Does not mean that we're handcuffed and tied to what the farming community does. It just means that it would be a much easier way to dispose of it.
Question, if we're eating it, okay, I mean, you're basically using it on crops, correct? Or that-
We are not.
No, but if the farmers are using it, can you, for instance, use it like, at, the ballparks in the outfield?
No.
It
It's
can't be in a place where,
that's a good question. And again, with the recycling and compost situation, okay, this is a much bigger discussion, but the compost center, it's mulch, right? We're looking at trying to make it into more of a compost, which is actually, again, another commodity. You have to inject nutrients into it to get to that final thing. We looked into doing that. Would our municipal sludge be available to? It is not. It's not a class, I think a class 1 or class A sludge.
Class A, yeah, we're a class B.
So the answer is no. It can be utilized as a fertilizer for essentially non-touching type situations as secondary.
didn't we also look into, remember we talked about getting that machine, where you dried it and you made it into pellets and stuff?
Yeah, that would be converting our sludge from a Class B to a Class A.
So it changes the way you can.
Yeah,
reduces
because
the moisture
basically-
content.
Yeah, basically you heat it.
Golf
and-
courses buy that stuff.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, I know that the golf courses buy that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
I think Kevin did look into that the last budget cycle. It was extremely costly.
Yeah, it's like $4 million to set that up. And then you've got about a $30,000 a year operational cost on top of that every year, so.
So, and again, with this whole concept of compost, which does not necessarily do our sludge, that should reduce then the fertilizer load that our local farming communities get from agriculture sludge, which can be injected into a compost situation because it's not, municipal sludge. So it's a big discussion item that we're working through, hopefully this winter time, to come up with a plan on the compost situation. And hopefully by that time, I'll have this situation worked out with the farming community. At the end of the day, it's really irrelevant because we got to be able to handle our own sludge regardless of some contractual agreement.
We'll still be spreading sludge.
Yeah.
So,
Do what?
I said, we'll still be spreading sludge.
For example, if there's corn growing over there in the summertime and we got a sludge situation, we got to be able to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And that's what this piece of equipment allows us to do. And now we're using it at the landfill, which is that helps us operationally quite a bit, so.
Good. All right.
Okay.
Picking up where we left off, we need a motion and approval for the amendment to move the budget money to cover the
Yes.
cost of the sludge.
Yes, to pay for it.
Moved, he seconded.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, move the money, take it to the council, and
It'll go to council on next meeting, so.
be authorized to spend the money. Meadow Lake meter swapping. Who they swapping with?
We are actually taking out their old meters, which are Neptune meters, and we're swapping them over to our census system meters.
Okay,
So we've started that process. I know there's a time frame and we have to have all this done. So Beverly's been doing a really good job of making phone calls and getting appointments. So our guys can go in there. We've done a good job. My crews have done a good job of going out there, being very professional, meeting with the residents. I have two-man crews. One person goes inside, one person stays outside because it's a two-process system. It's working out real well. We do have some residents that are, not as happy as other ones, but I think that was just part of the process.
We
From
grounding these?
No, we're not, but I don't think that any of the houses out in Meadow Lake have any peripheral devices hooked into theirs like we have in Washington, meaning washing machines and dryers and all that other stuff, so. So that's really, that's that, just we're moving forward. And then also with, coming along with Meadow Lake subdivision, we need to run a water line from our pump station to the, to Meadow Lake Farms, which means we have to finally complete our pump station that we installed in 2001. It was actually designed for Meadow Lake Farms. It just didn't have a third pump in it. So we're in the process of doing that. I got my numbers together, and I'll bring them to you guys next month. Just want to finalize some things on it. That's going to be right around about $18,000 to install the equipment for the third pump on that. But that's just, it was, the pump was planned for that, it just never was, how can I say this? The piping was put in for the equipment, it just was never wired, nor, there's a VFD has to go along with that, a pump, some other controls in the panel, so none of that was installed in there, so that's what we have to have installed now.
Was it Meadow Lake where we were having the problem going under the road or whatever it was?
Yes, and we're still, we will have to bore underneath of the highway to get the pipe over there. There's no, best what we can tell, we've done a very extensive search for the sleeve that was supposed to be underneath the highway. We have not found it. I've always heard that sleeve wasn't there, and apparently it seems,
Confirmed that.
with all the work we've done to try and find it, it seems that sleeve is not there. So now we're gonna have to bore underneath of the highway to do that. So I've got one bid from one boring contractor. I'm waiting for two more. Once I get them, that might be if I can't get it before the meeting, it may be an email sent out to you guys saying this is what the bids were. Of course, we'll take the lowest and best bid, I always
Probably a
do.
pretty expensive undertaking.
Right now, well, the only bid that I've got sitting out there right now is $60,000, which is a lot less, surprisingly, than when we put the sleeve underneath of the highway out west to take in the two churches. That was about $200,000. But that was back in like 2002, I think, whenever that church was built, and there wasn't a lot of people that could bore under and bore through rock. Now almost every boring company can bore through rock, so
Yeah.
it's gotten a lot more competitive. So
How big a line will that be?
12-inch bore.
it will be a 12-inch.
So with that, so with the meter swapping discussion item, each resident in Meadow Lake paid the city $500 essentially for the meter costs and the city's labor costs to swap those out. So you did receive a revenue, I guess, or an offsetting cost for that meter swap. It added up to like $29,000 for the entire subdivision. With the water line extension, there was a $50,000 payment. Now, those payments have not been realized in your budget numbers because the work hasn't been completed yet. Once it's completed, we'll request that money from the escrow account as part of the pre-annexation agreement. In addition, the sewer line has been completed, and that also had a payment, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but there were offsetting costs here. So it's not like it's a sunk cost for the residents to get Meadow Lake in. They did pay for that work coming in. Now, there were these unforeseens that, over 40 years and 3 plan sets of the sleeve being there, those type of things that we just we could not anticipated. However, this pump station and this water line extension will benefit the entire bowl area in the future, specifically the Jasper Farm. And as you work up and then tie in over to Autumn Leaf and some other things that we've been kind of chasing for 10 plus years now, that this will positively affect those as well. So it's a good investment in getting on the south side of 100.
Yeah, good.
So.
Any other business on water?
I do have one thing. The water rate discussion that we had last meeting, I don't know if anyone had any comments regarding what those were. We're going to look towards August to try to get that on a council agenda. Maybe the second meeting in August is kind of the concept. With the first admin ops meeting in July, which will be the first Monday in July, to have kind of a meeting in front of council about that. So if anyone want to attend that meeting, we'll let you know when that happens.
Okay, good.
Again, nothing's really changed at this point as far as what we're proposing. It makes us essentially operationally neutral or break even with a small percentage, $20,000 a year additional. We will look at providing another option to council if we want to be a little more aggressive to make improvements to the system. This just gets us caught up to some level. If you wanted to build a water tank, like, well, we have one budgeted in capital improvement. Let's just say 10 years down the road after this capital improvement sales tax, if you wanted to build a water tank or do some pretty big improvements, you'd have to request money somewhere else. That is not necessarily ideal in running this type of fund, but it does keep water rates as low as possible. So that's something we're going to be talking about again. I know the mayor has asked me, hey, give me a rundown about how we got to this point one more time. So we'll talk about that again.
Have you discussed this with the people out in the industrial tract? I mean, have you
Yeah.
had meetings with those people?
Yes, actually, Darren texted me this morning. He apologized for not being here, but he said they have started meetings with the high-end users, which is, was it Tradco, or I don't know if that's their name now, but Frykes and I believe Mercy was going to be, are kind of the three top-end users that they're going to talk about it with. Keep in mind, it's the idea there was to limit the dollar number that those industrial tract users, because they're the high-end users, limit their dollar number, which has a lower percentage increase. But for like somebody like, Kevin, for example, sorry. But
No, that's all right.
a low-end user may see an increase of $3 to $4, $5 maybe a month, which seems to have a big percentage of his $20 typical bill, but it's $3, $4, $5 a month. Where if you take that same model and you put it out the industrial park, you're talking about thousands of dollars added a month, which is not palatable. So that's what we're working to. And I think we have a good framework of what it looks like. It's just now putting the number so we can get to this spot where we need to be of making improvements to the system. It's gone on for too long.
Right.
Cheap water has gone on for too long. We need to get caught up.
All right. So you'll let us know when the operations meeting is?
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
And
We should be there.
we just want to make sure we're prepared for council if they, because again, this only gets us caught up.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow for substantial improvements, which would be necessary. I mean, if we're paving streets, we need to be looking, if you got 2-inch water lines, to be replacing those water lines. It just makes sense. Otherwise, you kick the can another 15 years down the road.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Perfect. Old business?
Yeah, the wastewater treatment plant violations, that's been out there for a little while. I just wanted to give you guys an update on that. DNR has those in hand, and they are now out for what they call public comment. They'll sit that way for, I do believe it is 90 days. Once the public comment is finalized, meaning nobody responds back and questions anything, which generally it doesn't happen, we'll be able to proceed with finalizing this whole violation thing and getting new operational permits out, and this will be behind us. So
Thank heaven.
we're in that phase now where we're holding right now, just waiting on time. So Cochran did a good job of getting us all caught up, they spent a lot of time working with the state. So they did a really good job assisting us on this. So I'm really pleased with how they worked, and I think John is too. So really good partnership to get this taken care of. So
Okay. Gets us up to date. Any other discussion items today? Anybody? Our next meeting is scheduled for July 13th, next month. And we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, thank you.
should that be the 14th? We both caught that.
Huh?
I think that should have been the 14th, and not the 13th.
13th is a Monday.
Yeah. That's all
Trying
right.
to get it over sooner.
That's all right.
Had this
It'll be the
friend
14th.
of mine, he's the
And just so you know,
Huntsville Lake Jailhouse.
yes, that admin meeting we'll have
He
will be
looks
on
up
the
everything. He was the
Just
one,
read what's written.
6th.
he was the one wondering about,
We do it an hour before the council. The
because
admin,
his contract expires.
but we'll send an
He
email.
doesn't
Okay, you'll
have,
send the email out, that'll be great.
he said there's about 3 or 4 haulers out there, but his expires in about 2 months. He said some of them have something on me, go, he says, I understood that when that expired.
It's open today.
Trash, Mark.